I swear by Almighty God that the evidence I shall give shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth.
Thank you very much. Please have a seat.
Thank you.
Yes, Mr. Mills.
Thank you, sir. Just start by giving us your full name, if you would.
It's Sharon Louise Barrett.
Thank you, Ms. Barrett. If we could have on screen, please, LCC 001771. And can you just confirm for us that this is your statement to the inquiry? It's dated the 28th of August of this year.
Yes.
And are the contents of that statement true to the best of your knowledge and belief?
Yes.
Thank you. You tell us in the early paragraphs of your statement something about your qualifications, your background and your experience. You're a senior family support worker, is that right?
Yes.
And you effectively would have been a supervisor, being a senior support worker, you would have been a supervisor for the family support workers such as Miss Lewis, from whom we heard yesterday.
Yes.
Thank you. You tell us that you have a level 6, that is to say a degree level qualification in professional supervision and professional practice from Lancaster University.
I do. I also have a postgraduate in leadership and management.
Thank you. And is that the qualification that you refer to in paragraph 5 at the bottom of the page?
Yes.
Yeah. Shall we deal with that? Because you say that that was specific to managing people in children's centres, but is relevant to the Children and Family Wellbeing Service work. Just tell us what the crossover was.
It's about managing people and understanding how vicarious trauma might impact on staff and decision making.
Thank you. You also tell us in your background section that you completed an autism awareness course in 2011. Was that when you started working in this area, or was that with your previous work?
So that would have been in the children's centres, but we have had updated autism awareness training. So that was a big block of autism awareness training, and then we get additional autism awareness training through the job that I do now.
Thank you. And can you just give us the headlines of what you've taken away from that training? It's probably a big subject, but can you just give us some of the key points that you've taken from that training?
Yes, I would say that the way that we need to communicate with people with autism can vary, that not all autistic people are the same, that you've got levels of a scale of autism, if you will, and that we need to be looking at working with people holistically with an awareness of autism, but without prejudice of what autism is.
Recognising that need for an individual person-by-person approach, had your training in autism given you to understand that as regards the potential for risk to others, in some individual cases, an autism spectrum disorder could actually be an increase in risk to others?
I would say no.
Are you now aware of that?
I am aware of it, but not through the training.
Thank you. So that wasn't covered in the training?
No.
Were you aware of it prior to the attack, that could be the case?
No.
So that's something you've come to understand more recently?
Yes.
From this case, or has the training improved?
I would say partly from this case, but then from more research that I've personally done as well.
Thank you. Also relevant to your background, I think you've extensive working in special education needs schools and within children with special education needs within mainstream schools. Is that right?
Yes.
Was that earlier in your career?
Yes, it was very early in my career. It was when I was 20.
From being a family support worker, you progressed to being the senior family support worker. When did you gain that promotion?
So I gained that promotion when I was in Children's Centre, so about 15 years ago. And then we were paid over from the NHS through the transformation of the services into what was Wellbeing Prevention and Early Help, which then became CFW service.
Thank you. Now, there's a section, if we go over, Sarah, please, to page 2. There's a section in your statement that deals with your role in the structure of the Children and Family Welfare Service. You're somewhat in the middle between two witnesses. So we've dealt with some of that with Miss Lewis, and we have Miss Ashworth, the head of the service, to come. So I'm not going to cover most of that with you, but I do just want to pick out one or two aspects of it. Could we just look, please, at paragraph 41 of your statement? It's on page 6, sorry.
So,
We can pick this up with Ms Ashworth, but in paragraph 41, you're dealing with the second period of time, September 20 to February 21. Do you see that there?
number 41, did you say?
Paragraph 41.
Yeah.
But if you look at the heading, you'll see that the context for this is your second period
Yes.
of involvement. All right, I'm just helping you to orientate yourself. Now, I'm not asking about this because of the detail of the second involvement. We'll come on to that. But what you do say is that in the context of a particular record here, you're saying this is done by other professionals outside the CFW. At the time, CFW sat at level 2B on the continuum of need. Low-level early help was level 2A. CFW was at level 2B, and child in need, children's social care, was level 3.
Yeah.
So should we understand that there was a change in the levels and how they were applied with the 2A and the 2B?
So there wasn't a change in the levels, there was a change in the structure to the con to make it clearer. So basically, level 1 is universal, so that is...
Yes, we've seen that. Don't worry about that.
Yeah.
Go to the next level.
Yeah, so level 2 is your early help in terms of additional support within a school, or maybe a service working at a very low level with a child with a single need. And then level 3 is more complex, where maybe multi-agencies are involved, or there's a complex need within that, but it doesn't meet a safeguarding concern. Yep. So that's where we sit now.
And the safeguarding concerns, in terms of potential for Section 47, that would be at level 4.
Level 4, yes.
But if at any time those changes, during the course of your evidence, those changes and the labelling of them becomes relevant, please take a moment to explain it. If we see 2A or 2B and there's a difference of distinction at the time, please feel free to mention that. The other aspect in terms of roles and how things were organised that I want to ask you about is if a case sat at level 3, and was being dealt with by the family support workers within your team, what was the process and permissions that would be required to, in the language that I think was used, step it up back to level 4? Who would instigate it, and what would the process be, and who would need to authorise it?
So that would depend on the situation. If it was an immediate risk of harm, then the agency who identified that immediate risk would immediately deal with that through children's social care or the police. If it was...
So just pausing there, in that scenario, it wouldn't even need to go through CFW. The outside agency could just say, this is currently at level 3, but this is very worrying.
Absolutely.
Refer it in at level 4.
Absolutely.
Have I understood correctly?
Yes.
All right. And sorry, you were going to go on to say.
Yeah. If there's concerns where we sit in a TAF, which is a team around the family, and we have all agencies talking at that point. So if we're identifying risks that are heightening, if we're concerned that risks are increasing, we would discuss that as TAF members. And then we can discuss that with the social worker. We do that through allocations meetings. We have family discussions meetings with the social worker, and we can discuss those concerns with the social worker.
Who makes the decision?
Ultimately, at that point, the social worker would make the decision. It's usually the team lead for the social worker.
Thank you. If we look at your paragraph 18, please, on page 3, we remind ourselves that at level 3, the service that is offered is subject to the consent, yes?
Yes.
Given that there will be children involved, can you just help us with a couple of aspects of that? Is it technically speaking the consent of the parents that's required, or of the child, or both?
Depends on the age of the child and whether they're competent to make that decision themselves. So, in the main, we will be working with parents who would give consent to share information or work with us. But children who are competent to make those decisions themselves can be given the option to work with us without parental consent. And equally, if we're working with children that are older who are saying they do not consent to the support, we can't work with that child. They're not consenting. They've got a right to say no to that support.
If consent is either not forthcoming or consent is only nominally provided, and what I mean by that is the family purport to consent, but in fact they're not seriously engaging. Presumably, in some cases at level 3, the view would be taken, well, this is a family who are struggling to cope by definition, but they're not engaging or they're not consenting, and we really don't think, on a fair analysis, even in the absence of their consent, we really don't think that there is a need for social work involvement at level 4. And presumably, if I'm right in that summary, there would be some cases where the service would withdraw because of the lack of consent and effectively would not do anything further.
Yeah, so we would try and chase consent. We'd try and build the relationship to gain the consent.
Take that as read.
Yeah.
But with all of that being done,
Yeah, we wouldn't have a right to keep a family open. We would have to close the case on the fact that they don't give consent.
all right. Now, would there, however, be some other cases where, perhaps at the more complex or the more marginal end, close to level 4, where the withdrawal of consent or only the nominal consent where they're really not engaging would itself mean, well, on analysis, because they're not engaging or because they're now not consenting, that pushes the case up to level 4, because in the absence of consent, we're sufficiently worried about what's going on that we think this needs to be dealt with at level 4.
If there's significant risk of harm,
Yeah.
then yes.
And that withdrawal of consent or the not providing of consent, would this be right, could tip the balance of the assessment to think, well, this was already close to level 4, and now they're not consenting or they're only purporting to consent. In looking at the risk, that tips the assessment of risk, because now there is a significant risk of harm, given that they're not prepared to deal with us.
Yeah, in a general case, in any case, yes, that is the case, yeah.
And the difference being that potentially at level 4, one's into the potential use of statutory powers.
Exactly.
Was the CFW a time-limited service?
At the point of Andrea Fontaine's, I don't know the word, sorry, when Andrea Fontaine was working the case.
In her period,
We were
when she
a
was
12
the
to
case
20 week service. We have increased through the life of the case, we increased to be open longer, but we were still time limited. Now we are not time limited.
So as you look back, you think that that's only the period that ended in February 21, that technically speaking it was a time-limited service. That was the end of Ms Fontaine-Smith's period.
No, so that was a 12 to 20 week, and then we went into a 20 week. And then as we've come up to when Ashley held the case, we were less time limited, but now we are not time limited
Right.
at all.
So if we look at paragraph 20 of your statement on page 3, originally help was offered for a 12-week period.
Yeah.
The matter was still open at 20 weeks. We'd be looking to close the case down.
Yes.
You're saying that around that time, 2021, there was a change and the emphasis became on 20 weeks rather than 12.
Yes.
Is that right? If we look at LCC 202302 at page 98, please. This is March 2022. Do we see there in the top entry
Yes.
there's a reference there to a reminder that it's a time-limited service, and that was still being said, I think, in March 2022.
Yes, but also within that period, the needs had been met. So it wasn't that we were closing because it was a time-limited service.
But focus on the question, if you would.
Sorry.
We'll come back to whether the needs have been met.
Okay.
But there's still reference being given in March 2022 to it being a time-limited service.
Yes.
And is that by that stage a reference to a slightly longer period, the 20 weeks rather than the 12?
Yes.
Thank you. That can come down from the screen. In terms of your own role, as well as allocating cases to the individual family support workers, you supervise the work that they're doing.
Yes.
We've seen some individual supervision notes, including from you, but then sometimes they seem to go on the case notes on the early help module, I think would be the
So there was a change in how we did it. So originally it was through documents, and then EHM changed to be able to put the supervision onto the case notes. So there's two different ways of putting it on, but the supervisions themselves were done monthly.
Thank you. Would the degree of supervision that you gave depend upon the experience of the family support worker?
Yes.
So with somebody less experienced, you might go to more meetings to lend support
Yes.
in a common sense way.
Yes.
And sometimes you would attend as the senior, I think, in any event, but you never become the case holder yourself.
Not the case holder, no.
Thank you. Against that background then, can we turn to your different periods of involvement? And if we start with your first period involvement, that was supervising Andrea Fontaine in the period March 2020 to June 2020. If we can look at paragraph 26 of your statement, please, at page 4.
Did you say number 26?
Paragraph 26,
Yeah.
page 4, it'll come up on screen for you. And you say there that Ms. Cookson, just remind us who she was.
So Miss Cookson was the senior who held the case in the initial episode prior to escalation to children's social care at the point of the first prevent referral.
Thank you. I think we can see that, in fact, it's also before the first prevent referral because she was involved as early as October, yes? You deal in this paragraph with the fact that you were able to have some conversations with her about AR's case and previous referrals. Can you just help generally with the timing of that? Do you know, was that at the actual time of the handover, or had it been earlier?
So it would have been when the case came back to us from Children's Social Care, so at the point of the episode opening for Andrea.
So whenabouts would that have been?
2020?
So this is around the March 2020 period. It's not much earlier on in that.
No, it will only be when the case has stepped back to us.
Thank you. And then if we can have LCC 30973 on the screen, please. And if we look at the bottom half of the page, please. You were being forwarded, consistent with what you've just told us, you were being forwarded information here by Miss Cookson.
Yes.
Info AR you might want to read up on for Andrea.
Yes.
Just help us with the context of that. Why would you be reading up on it for Andrea? Is that because you've not yet allocated and you're going to say this is what the case is all about?
I think that's the language that Andrea used. We'd both read up on it. So myself and Andrea, I would make sure that I was au fait with all the information, but also that Andrea was also understanding of the information of history of cases.
And I think you'll be aware from this email exchange, which we've given you notice, that when we look briefly, please, Sarah, at page 4, that this would have contained important information. For example, third paragraph, Alfonso saying that AR is not a risk at home or to himself. However, he, that is father, further commented that he, AR, would be a risk elsewhere because if someone did something to him, he would do something in return. He added that AR does not understand when to let go, he holds on to things. So this was helpful and relevant information, would you agree?
Yes. Am I allowed to add?
Yes?
I think that we were going off an assessment from Children's Social Care, so this was historic information that I was keeping in mind and Andrew was keeping in mind, but we're also working from an assessment that's a current assessment.
I understand that. I'm not saying this was the only information, the current assessment.
Yes.
But let's be clear from the outset. Historical information could be important.
Yes, absolutely.
There should be a longitudinal assessment of risk.
Absolutely.
Yes? You don't just look at the current position. No. Because in AR's case, if you did that, you'd miss the information about what he did at the tail end of 2019. Yes? All right. Now, against that background, so I think you agree that this is relevant information as to risk, but you're saying there would have been other material, including an up-to-date assessment.
Yes.
All right. Against that background, if we go back to page 1, we can see at the top of the page, could we have that expanded, please, now? It comes back saying, from you to Ms. Fontaine, I've read through the email, starting at the bottom as directed. I think that was a bit of a joke because there was a slightly directive thing saying start at the bottom and read up, which you were indicating with your winky face was a bit obvious.
Yes.
But anyway, you've done that. I think you need to read it for yourself, and then we'll have a chat about the actions, what you've already done, and what we can do now in the current climate. Okay, and we remind ourselves that this is March 2020, so that's probably a reference to lockdown.
Yes.
Yeah. Thanks. Once you have digested the email, please delete it. So just help us with the please delete it. Was that a common practice?
So information that's shared on a child's file is relevant to the child only. So information that we're given that a child wouldn't need to see when they requested their file would be spoken about in supervision and put into notes, but we wouldn't necessarily put the full thing onto their file.
But as I've already taken you to, the information that was contained within this was directly relevant to AR's risk to others.
But that information was already with us on his file. So that information was already available to us because we worked in the same system. So Anne's information was already written up in the file, and that was just an overview.
I understand. If you, just bearing in mind that instruction, once you have digested the email, please delete it. Mm-hmm. If you just go to paragraph, back to that, can come down from the screen. And if we look at your statement of page 4, paragraph 29, can we have paragraph 29 expanded, please, Sarah? So you were asked to address this, and what you said in your statement, second part of this paragraph, so what I meant by the instruction to delete was not to add the email to the electronic note system.
Yes.
The emails from the school didn't need to go, as we were going to discuss their contents as part of supervision. And the EHM general notes are AR's notes, it's his story. The emails I was asking Andrea not to add to the notes concerned a discussion whether it was for FIS or SEND to do the risk assessment prior to AR's return to school. Andrea needed to know about it, but the information didn't need to go on to the electronic general notes. Your instruction wasn't no need to put this on the notes. It was to delete the email. Why did you go further and ask for the email to be deleted? I'm asked to explore that with you.
There's no other place for us to put an email on our system like that. So it would either go on the child's notes or it would be deleted, and I would be transferring information onto the system that's relevant for that child.
You could have just given an instruction to say, there's no need to add this to the notes. This is for your information only. It just seems somewhat curious to direct the family support worker to physically delete the email. Why not just say, there's no need to add this to the notes, the relevant information is on there already?
I would say that's just my use of language. There was no malice meant by it. It was just an instruction, and we work in the same office, we sit in the same office. She was probably sat by me anyway when we were talking about it.
I'm asked to explore with you just to check that it's not the case that there was something in this email chain that you didn't want to be recorded on the systems.
No, because I know that you can bring the emails back as it's relevant today, that is the case.
Thank you. And as you've touched on already, and I was going to come to it, but as well as this informal passage of information, you would have got information from the referral from CSC itself, yes? LCC 30238. So would you have seen that and read it?
Yes.
Can we just make the top half of the page bigger with the referral to early help?
Yes.
Thank you. And we note, just leaving that on page for the moment, that in the please provide a brief summary of current CSC involvement, AR has assaulted another pupil in a school he used to attend. He attended the school for the purpose of assaulting a particular pupil, but assaulted another with a hockey stick. On arrival of the police, AR said he had a knife in his bag. It was confirmed. He was arrested. He later discussed feelings, intentions of killing the pupil he was looking for with the hockey stick or knife if the stick was not enough. Yes?
Yes.
So at that stage, in fairness to the social work team, that important information about the intent in relation to the knife was being recorded. Would you agree? He later discussed feelings, intentions of killing the pupil.
Can you repeat the question? Sorry.
That was being flagged up in clear language right at the top of this form, that AR had not just had a hockey stick and along with a knife, but he had discussed after his arrest feelings, intentions of killing the pupil he was looking for.
That's my understanding.
That was flagged up. It
Yes.
leaps off the page, does it not?
Yes.
Thank you. So I don't think we particularly need to go to it, but I think you can just confirm that as part of all of this, there would also have been conversations going on. We don't need to turn it up, but if I tell you, and for the Chair's note, that at LCC 002302 at page 17, there's a note of a step-down telephone call from Anna Jameson to Miss Fontaine. That's the sort of thing you would expect.
Yes.
Thank you. And I think, again, if you want me to go to it, I'm happy to do so. But I think you would also have been aware at this time that it was known that AR had accessed, quote, hate crime material on the internet, including beheadings.
Yes, because it was our service that was in the meeting with Acorns that advised Acorns to make the Prevent referral.
And so for your record, that's page 18 of the detailed notes.
Thank you very much.
If we could look back in your statement to paragraph 26. Those same notes having referred to a Prevent referral, what you say in paragraph 26 in relation to that is that there didn't seem to be concerns about AR being involved in extremism,
Yes.
but AR's behaviours were linked to his black and white thinking and his possible ASD. Is that right?
So that's what was coming out of the Prevent referral. Yeah, they were saying that it wasn't for them, it wasn't extremist.
So that's what you'd understood the position to be. Did you know what the readout was in more formal terms?
From Prevent?
Yes.
No.
That they had addressed that he essentially wasn't thought to be vulnerable to terrorist radicalisation, but he was very vulnerable, and those needs were to be met by other agencies effectively.
I knew he was vulnerable and I knew he was open to CAMS and CYJS because of those vulnerabilities.
Thank you. Sticking with this paragraph, the reference to the risk being assessed to be medium but with a low level of probability, where had you got that from?
From the CYJS report.
You're right that they had assessed the risk as medium, but the risk of reoffending was actually also medium rather than low.
Our paperwork, I've seen documentation to say low.
Do you think that may have been at a later stage?
Possibly.
In any event, in relation to the risk of reoffending at this stage, did you understand that part of the assessment that was going on was that there was little opportunity at that precise moment in time because of the lockdown?
Yes.
And that when lockdown was eased, the opportunities would increase?
Yes.
You suggest here that your understanding was that AR's behaviours were linked to his black and white thinking and his possible autism spectrum disorder. although he didn't have a formal diagnosis at the time. With the increased knowledge that you have now, reflecting on matters, do you think that that was too simplistic a take on things?
We're an early help service, and we were looking at other professionals such as CAMS and CYJS who were making those judgments based on their strengths and what their role is. So possibly yes, but I would be looking to those more.
Forgive me, I just wonder if the noise could be kept down just a little. It's very distracting.
I would be looking to those agencies who were making those assessments of his needs at the time for more information around that. That I'm not qualified to make that judgment on somebody with ASD at that point.
Yeah, and I'm not suggesting for a moment, Ms. Batt, that this is an easy area, and nor am I raising this as a matter of personal criticism of you, so much as looking at the systemic issues.
Yes.
But looking at it now reflectively, would you agree that a vulnerability or a weakness in the thinking at the time may have been, he's behaving in this way, he's likely to be autistic, and his behaviours are explained by the autism, rather than this is a youth who is likely to be autistic and he's acting in a dangerous way, not necessarily because, and it could go further to say the fact that he is autistic means that the risks may be even higher.
I would say with the information I know now from the inquiry, yes.
So at the time, not you as an individual, but a tendency towards somewhat explaining away, I'm not going to say excusing, that would be unfair, but explaining away risk behaviours on the basis of autism without perhaps sufficiently recognising the potential increased risk.
Possibly, yes.
Ms Ashworth, in her written evidence as the head of service, has said that in cases such as this, including when there is a step down or a referral from the MASH, your team quite often had to go fishing for the necessary information in back records. Would you agree with that?
Sometimes, yes.
And would you think that this was one such case to an extent?
Yes.
Would you agree that there would be significant advantages in having a system of, I'm not going to say at a glance, but at a single view page that has warning flags and warning signs for particular types of risk, so that you wouldn't have to go fishing for the information so much, because there would be warning indicators about use of violence, which could then have a page that gives a clear synopsis of relevant historical information relevant to that risk?
That would only be as good as the information we were given at the time. So yes, I agree, but we'd need to have that information to be able to put those risk factors on.
Yes, but as we're going to look at, and part of what I'm going to suggest is that within your service, because it's very easy, I'm afraid, to say, oh, it's only as good as what other people tell us, but it's also about the retention of corporate knowledge within your service.
Yes.
So we're going to be looking during the course of the evidence today across 5 periods, and we may see evidence that the risk information of risk to others gets diluted
Yes.
down the downstream, all right? So before one goes to, well, what about others? I want you to focus on your agency and your systems. Having something that captured this information from early on, of which we're partially cited on at this time, but for example, he intended to kill the pupil, and he made a statement to that effect. That would have been something very useful to keep on a page of key warnings so that every person who opens the file would see that without having to go fishing for it?
So we do have a chronology now that's being developed. We weren't using a chronology at that point, but as a service now we do have a chronology and a front page that does that.
So that you would say that the problem with the chronology is you might have to go searching in the
Yes,
chronology.
but we have...
Does the front page
Yes.
have sufficient warnings that flags that up?
That's where it should go, yeah. That's there now.
Thank you. Maybe very helpful, you don't need to do this personally, but with the legal team to provide an example, it can be anonymised, of how that front page looks and,
Yes.
and has the warnings, please.
Yes.
Thank you. If we look at paragraph 32 of your statement together, please, Ms. Barrett, we'll see that you give this pithy synopsis that the referral to your service was in relation to AR's independence, school attendance, family dynamics, and his anxiety, autism.
Yes.
Is that right?
Yes.
Thank you. And if we look at LCC 30283, please. This is the CAF assessment produced by Ms. Fontaine on the 9th of April. If we look at page 2, please. Forgive me, just go back to page 1 just for one moment.
Can I make it clear that this is not a CAF assessment, this is our non-systems assessment. The assessments come from children's social care, and this is a non-systems bit where we just get the voice of the family in addition to the assessment. So this is not a CAF assessment, it's a non-systems. If you look at, it says what level of assessment is required, it says non-systems CAF assessment. So it's not a CAF. The information that it's a step down from CSC, so that means a CNF is in place. So that is the assessment we're going off, is the CNF assessment, and the non-systems CAF is just getting the voice of the family at that point.
The complexity of some of this is impenetrable to the outsider. What's the title of the form?
It's called a non... So it's...
What's the title of the form? Forgive me, but look at the top left of the screen.
I understand that, but that's on our... I understand that. That's on our system.
What's the answer to my question? What is the title?
It says CAF assessment. I agree. It does say that.
Okay.
But further down...
All right.
Yeah.
All right. I'm interested in the information.
Yeah.
So on page 1, if we look at the assessed needs, we do see that assessed being involved in knife crime is an assessed need. Yes?
Yes. But it wasn't from the CNF assessment. So from the CNF assessment, what had come down to us as a service was around the need for education, social isolation, parenting. So I understand where your misunderstanding is on that, and where it doesn't seem correct. But we're going off a CNF assessment from a social worker. And the needs...
Forgive me, I think this is becoming very overcomplicated.
Okay.
And if it's my fault, you're going to have to simplify your answers.
Okay.
All that I'm dealing with is whatever this technical form was, all right, don't try to get ahead of where I am going, just focus on the issues that I'm raising with you. This form shows that there was an assessed need under safe and sustainable places reducing crime. It flags that AR was a young person involved in knife crime.
Historically, yes.
Well, forgive me, why the historically?
Because the assessment had been done from children's social care, so we're flagging that had happened, but we're not the service that's working with that.
Well, we'll come on to that.
Okay.
But you emphasise, it's the second time, with the greatest respect, that you've done it in your evidence, that you've emphasised historically.
Okay, sorry.
You don't need to apologise, but how long ago was the knife crime?
The year before.
It wasn't the year, well, it was technically the year before, but it was right at the end of the year. It's about 4 months before.
Yes.
We're not talking about a risk long ago that no one needs to be concerned with anymore, are we?
No.
No.
I'm not saying that, sorry.
So that is an assessed need. And if we look at page 2, can we have the whole of that text identified, please? We'll come on to the issue about which agencies are dealing with that. But the focus of page 2 doesn't really deal with that part of the assessed needs. And there may be a reason for that, but just cast your eye down the type of issues being raised here. And let's just take it in stages. We'll come on to the reason why, but the more detailed assessment under each of these headings on page 2 doesn't really then deal with that assessed need, does it?
No.
And in fact, it gets some aspects wrong. So if you look at boundaries and behaviours, it says that AR can throw things on the floor and stomp and slam doors when angry, but this is infrequent. There's no physical aggression for either of the boys. Now, that may be reflecting what has been said, but objectively speaking, the suggestion that there's not physical aggression being evidenced by AR is not an accurate summary.
So this is the voice of the family. So this is a radar, which is the voice of the family. It's not an assessment. I understand that it says CAF assessment on it, but it's not used as an assessment. It wouldn't have been shared as an assessment. The CNF assessment from Children's Social Care is the assessment that's been used. When it comes down to us, we gain the voice of the family, and that's the recording that it goes on.
Should this then have led to an early help plan?
So that the early help plan was developed by the social worker from the CNF assessment.
But what about now that it's in the CFW team? Should there have been an early help plan for you, for your team?
So when it steps down from Children's Social Care, the social worker is the one who identifies the plan, and we bring that plan forward.
Right. It may be in the break that if your legal advisors think that there was a plan of that kind, they can help us to identify it, because we've not been able to find one.
That's fine.
But there should have been a plan, should there?
Yes.
All right. And would you have expected it to deal with the assessed need in relation to AR being somebody who is involved in knife crime?
So we would work from the social worker's recommendations. So what the social workers recommended at that point, I would expect to see it in the plan. So yes, I would have expected to see something, but it wouldn't be for our service.
But if it had been missed by their service, your service should have picked it up. These are not, with respect, difficult points. If the need is assessed that it's a young man involved in knife crime, the service should be including that within the plan of action. It may be that other agencies would take forward the work, but that surely should be covered.
I can't see the. I don't know where the plan is at the moment. That's the bit that I'm.
Don't worry about that. I think.
Yes, I agree.
Forgive me, you are
should be covered,
persistently seem to be looking for where I'm going in my questions. Could you keep it simpler and focus on the questions that I'm asking? All right. You would expect an assessed need to be dealt with in the plan.
Yes.
Thank you. In general terms, what work was Miss Fontaine able to do with AR and his family between March and May at this time going forward, in the very important context of the difficulties of lockdown?
So unfortunately none, because we weren't able to go into the family home. The lockdown in Lancashire were tight. AR wasn't coming out of the family home at that point. We weren't allowed to go into the family home, and he wouldn't do work on Teams or anything like that.
And presumably that was common to many of your cases at the time?
Yes.
Thank you. I don't think I need to look up the record for this. When we come to assess the records, that we sometimes see, and we get it in relation to this period, for your case management notes, a big difference between the date of the note and something called the finalised date. And in this area, the finalised date is 2 years on in 2022. Do you know why that comes up?
Because the system didn't finalise the notes at that point. So basically now it finalises after 5 days, but it didn't finalise. So I think they did a full finalisation at that point.
Thank you. If we look at LCC 002302 on page 19, please. Could we just highlight the top entry, please? It's very difficult because of the format of these pages. But we see, don't we, starting on the 8th of April, that there are, by Miss Fontaine or Miss Fontaine-Smith, a series of attempts to contact the family, more often than not always, but more often than not, ending up in failure, that their calls went unanswered. Yes?
Yes.
So you'll see those, I'm not going to go through them all, but there are pages 21 to 22, a whole series of phone calls. A couple are answered.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. And that, in fairness to all involved, is exactly what you would expect in lockdown. Can't do face-to-face, but at least efforts are being made by telephone, yes?
Yes.
And then if we go, please, to the top of page 22, 22, the very top, please. We can see that this is an email from the head teacher at the Acorn School, and I bring it up. It's been incorporated into the notes. I've not gone through the early passage because I'm interested in the section, My Concerns Regarding Contact. So this is Acorns to the parents. My colleagues, Ms Forster and Ms Rooney, are contacting you daily to check that all is well and if AR or anyone else in the family requires support. Carol calls you on Tuesdays and Thursdays, and Emily Monday, Wednesdays and Friday. Unfortunately, contact with you is minimal. You do not answer the phone or return our calls. Our records show that you do not respond to most of the daily calls. It's really important that you respond to these calls, as this is how we can help you if there are any issues around learning or general welfare. We're working together with other services to assist families during these circumstances, and colleagues from the Youth Offending Team and Children's and Family Wellbeing Service have shared concerns that you have not responded to their calls also. So they were having very significant problems, of which you're obviously aware.
Yes.
And they're reflecting that there's obviously been conversations about how difficult it was to get this family to respond to calls, whether it was education, welfare or youth offending. They were not engaging well. Yes?
I agree.
And making allowance for the challenges of lockdown, and obviously there would have been challenges for parents in that too. This is not a family who are engaging well with services at this time.
Not at that point, no.
Thank you. I won't take you to it, but in fairness to you, you note that in your supervision records. I'll just give the reference LCC 002302 at page 24 at the top of the page. You refer to those difficulties. I think you also identified, therefore, that AR would need support when he returned to school in general terms.
Yes.
Yes. And in the meantime, a TAF team around the family meeting was required to coordinate the work of the various agencies. Yes.
Yes.
That was arranged for the 19th of May. Again, I don't need to go to the records because this is what you would expect. Yes? I think you weren't in attendance when the meeting. We'll pick it up with others who were. But after that, Ms Hodson, can we have LCC 202302 back on the screen, please, at page 26. It's the penultimate entry on the page. So that long entry, please, Sarah. I won't read it all out, but you'll note that this is the 20th of May and it follows the TAF. And I need to share my concerns with you following the TAF meeting for AR. I'd appreciate your input as fellow professionals. And then she raises a pithy but quite detailed set of concerns. They haven't moved on in their thinking. Dad is of the opinion that AR carried out the attack because of events at the Acorn, specifically the fight that he continues to refer to. Dad, and you can see by fight that they don't credit it, raising concerns that AR is not, that father is raising concerns about the amount of monitoring at the school. The amount of monitoring might be thought to be appropriate. Doesn't see any value of the work at the school. Thinks that AR should be in mainstream education, seems to perceive that AR is the victim rather than the perpetrator. It seems to be the view that he's a very good child, very respectable, and so on. Had complete non-compliance with schoolwork provided, referring to the assessment of risk by the yacht, that there was a medium risk of serious harm. But because of lockdown imminence wasn't there, and raising concerns about that assessment of risk. Now that is a professional raising reasoned concerns about the outcome of the TAF. Would you agree?
Yes.
And anyone receiving that in CFW should have been very concerned at the level of concern that that senior teacher in a specialist referral unit had. Would you agree?
Yeah, we would talk about it.
If we look, please, at page 27, the response from Miss Fontaine, can we have the top of the page highlighted? Courteous and civil, I don't suggest otherwise, but I appreciate this concern and frustration around the perceived mindset of Alphonse and AR. This can be challenged through conversation with Alphonse, which I'm happy to do. However, I don't feel that this increases the risk posed by AR because there is appropriate parenting in place. What do you make of that?
So at the time, AR was not coming out of the family home, and parents were aware that if he was to come out, and that we would support him and get back involved.
But what do you make of Miss Fontaine's suggestion that there was appropriate parenting in place?
That's what.
And that it doesn't increase the risk?
So that's what we'd observed as CFW going into the family home. That was our observations at that time.
Ms. Batt, that response was lacking in logic and wrong, wasn't it?
We can only go off what we're presented with.
Well, Ms. Batt, that's not accurate. And it's not right that you only go off what you're presented with. You don't just take the word of the parents and the child. You look at the total position on risk, surely.
We
Otherwise,
do.
you're taking what they say at face value.
We do. And that's why Andrea, I presume, why Andrea has said that we're going to talk about it with Alphonse at that point.
But the lack of understanding of what the school were raising. This is a case, Ms. Batt, in which AR has taken a hockey stick and a knife. He's used the hockey stick, and he's made clear that he would have been prepared to use the knife. Yes? Yes?
Yes.
What is being raised by the school is that instead of appropriate parenting, the father of the boy concerned diminishes that, puts it down to bullying, which the school is saying wasn't happening, and that increases the risk, because rather than father acting as an appropriate role model and underlining how completely unacceptable this was, what father was actually doing to the school is blaming others and downplaying the seriousness of what happened. Surely you can see that that means that the risks were increased because the desistance factor of an appropriate approach by the father in the house was lacking. So I put it to you again that this response was illogical and wrong.
So further down, she does make reference to the risk assessment and understanding the risk assessment and being able to see the risk assessment herself. So I would say that she's being professionally curious in that and trying to put together.
It was dismissive of the concern because it wasn't focusing on the risk to others. The actual suggestion that the father's approach to what his son has done, which was effectively dismissive and downplaying it, doesn't affect the risk, is wrong and illogical. I do feel I need to put that to you a third time. Could you deal with it?
I'm not saying no. I'm saying that based on what we were seeing, based on the information that we were getting from all parties, she's asking to look at the risk assessment. She's asking to see where exactly the risk assessment is, what measures have been already in place, and arrange another TAF meeting to discuss that so that we could, as an interagency, talk through those concerns. It's beneficial for these concerns to be raised during the meeting to allow appropriate challenge on some of these issues, so that all of us in a TAF meeting will be able to get together and discuss the concerns as a unit.
Later on in the email, in any case, the father's view of his son's temperament and behaviour and his expressions of his preferred educational placement does not, in my opinion, influence the risk level. Are you really seeking to support the suggestion that the father's view of his son's temperament and behaviour, if he was diminishing and accepting of it rather than challenging of it, did not influence the risk level?
No, I'm not.
Is that your evidence?
I'm not saying that. What I'm saying is that she's asking for a multi-agency meeting to be called to discuss those concerns. So I'm not saying that. I agree that could increase the risk, but she is asking for that multi-agency meeting to take place.
Well, she is asking for the multi-agency to take place, but she's also rejecting the appropriate concern being raised by the school, isn't she? She's not agreeing that those factors increase the risk.
Yeah.
And she was wrong in that.
Yeah.
Shortly after this point, the case was closed to CFWS. That's right, isn't it?
It is, yeah.
And one understands that there was that difficulty in face-to-face work. And I should acknowledge that the closure was supported by Alphonse R., who was happy for it to be picked up only in September. Would you agree?
Yes.
But if we look, please, at LCC 3098. Sorry, LCC 30998. And if we go, please, to page 5, there's a series of emails here, which I just want to deal with as quickly as I may. So it starts with Miss Fontaine at the bottom of the page. It's fine as it is, thank you, Sarah, saying, thank you for the update. I've spoken to Alphonse, who's explained the difficulty he would have in getting to school, as I believe transport would not be provided. Is that correct? what would be the plan moving forward if AR does not return to school? Will things continue as they are for the time being and then pick up back in September? Right, and if we just go to the previous page, please, page 4, Mrs. Hodson replies to that, explaining that they've asked all the parents to bring their own pupils in because of the COVID risks. We've offered AR one-to-one with a specialist teacher. If AR and his family choose not to take up this offer, he'll be taught via the virtual team. That's the only other option we have. But then she says, I'm not sure what you mean by back up in September. We're likely to be continuing with the current model in September of a campus team and a virtual team. We would not be able to consider putting AR into a classroom with other children until he's engaged with one-to-one teaching. We've been able to assess the response to this. And then at the top of the page, Ms. Fontaine replies, I don't think the transport was the only barrier, but I know it was the main issue due to the distance and so on. I apologise if my language wasn't clear. I simply meant, would the offer for AR to attend school with one-to-one still be available in September? If AR does not return to school this half-term, that leaves little by way of a role for our service at present. Once we're able to resume face-to-face support or AR returns to school, whichever is sooner, we could look at reopening the family to CFW service. Right? And then if we go to page 3 to see how that plays out, we see, perhaps we should pick it up at page 2. Good afternoon, and this is coming from the head teacher. Important to share that school has had quite a few issues in engaging with the family, despite efforts put in over the months. In view of your email below indicating that it leaves little by way of a role for our service at present, I'm a bit concerned that if CFW isn't involved over the summer, when schools will not be in the position to make any provision for students, we'll find it more challenging to reach AR in September if he does not return soon. And then these words, my understanding of working together to safeguard children 2018 with regard to early help services such as your service is that services should improve family functioning and build the family's own capability. Why do you think the school felt that it was necessary at this stage to seek to remind your team of its duties under working together to safeguard children?
Because we were looking to close because we couldn't have access to the family. And under the COVID restrictions, it was very difficult to get access to the family.
One understands that, but the fact that they were seeking to remind you of that was, would you agree, looking at it fairly now, an indication of the level of their concern of your team's proposal to close?
Yes.
If we go over the page, sorry, forgive me, just totally my fault, Sarah. We're happy to work with you on this, and you appear to be having more success than school. It would help us if you could continue to work directly with AR over the summer. And then if we go over the page, we feel that the family need more support so that they do engage. We've made substantial efforts to engage AR, indeed parents, to support him. They appear to be putting up barriers. We've tried various methods to provide learning. He won't engage. It explains that today colleagues went to a home visit, asked parents to read and sign the agreement, and learned that the father was refusing to sign it. So you see the flavour of what's been raised. And then if we go back to page 2, back to page 1, the response to this, also in struggle with engagement, there was no direct work with AR specified when the case stepped down from social care, identified that AR would benefit from some work around social interaction and appropriate responses. And that's because he was socially isolated?
Yes.
Even before lockdown?
Yes.
As discussed in the last TAF meeting, AR is struggling to engage over the telephone and video call. It was discussed and agreed that for AR to benefit from the work, this would need to be carried out face-to-face. I've encouraged AR to allow, I've encouraged father to allow AR to return to school earlier. And I've informed him that AR's transport is being looked into. And then there's reference to father making the decision following a conversation that he was given the option to wait until September, and he's chosen to take that option. As a consensual service, if neither Alphonse or AR want to engage with us until face-to-face support is an option, then it's their choice to make. There are no safeguarding concerns I'm aware of that would override the need for consent. And then your comment in relation to that is that that was a very professional and well put. Do you stand by that?
Yes, I do think it was professional and well put, yes.
In relation to this, for a child who had very recently engaged in serious criminal conduct with an intention to kill, who is socially isolated, where there is some engagement, but it's very limited and very patchy, but there is a concern that that child is isolated. There's now a lockdown going on, and the school is voicing concern about how difficult it is to get them engaged and saying, your service is doing better than us. Please don't close. Please carry on what support that you can. We feel it would be of benefit. How was stopping withdrawing completely going to improve AR's social isolation and the problems that he faced?
During COVID, we couldn't work on the social isolation aspect of it. Everything was locked down in Lancashire. We couldn't get into the family home. We weren't allowed to do a visit into the family home to build that relationship up with AR, to get him to come out into the community. We were very limited in what we could do at that point. AR and his dad had also said that due to COVID being the impact of COVID on black people was significantly higher than white people, and they were worried about the impact of COVID at that time. We were unable to carry out what we needed to do to get AR to engage with us.
I don't seek to diminish the difficulties of COVID, and no one would suggest or could suggest fairly that the measures that you were able to do as a team, which was encourage phone calls and keep trying to engage, no one could suggest that that was ideal in terms of what the goals would be. But forgive me again, you seem to be perhaps missing the point of my question. It was limited, and it may have limited effect, but here was the school pleading with you not to take that away. So why not keep open, even though it was limited, why not keep open what limited further engagement there could be?
At that point, we were a time-limited service. We were also not seeing the child, not seeing AR. If we're open and not seeing someone, it's seen to be not appropriate for us to be open. So that was
as I've mentioned, there were some occasions when they did answer the calls and there was engagement with the family, and nobody could be expecting you to see them face to face. And maybe the weight is in your answer is in the time-limited service. Was the pressure to close cases?
At that point, we were a time-limited service, so yes.
And here, can you not see that when you look through the notes and look at the request that's being made, not by a mainstream school having a bit of difficulty, but by a pupil referral unit in relation to a boy who's been involved in serious knife crime, can you not see that that doesn't look good? That in the interests of pressure of closing cases, the limited support to a socially isolated boy was withdrawn.
Yeah, and I think that's been acknowledged by Lancashire County Council and why we're not a time-limited service anymore.
Thank you. Let's turn then to the second period of involvement that you had, and that was from September to 2020 to February 2021. And again, the family support worker was Miss Fontaine. The case was reopened on the 14th of September, and as had been anticipated, I've questioned you as to why it was closed, but it was anticipated that it would be reopened. And in fairness to those working with you, Miss Fontaine was proactive because she positively approached Alphonse to see if the support was still wanted. Yes?
Yes.
So the reference for that is LCC 002302 at page 33. It's the bottom entry.
Thank you very much.
You say in paragraph 42 of your statement, if we can have that at page 6, that as is FIS's practice, an assessment was needed, and Andrew, as the key worker, was to produce the assessment. Months had passed since the previous assessment in April, and the situation had changed. Is that right?
Yes.
And you say that one point that was an issue in relation to an assessment was that the school had sent emails raising concerns around AR's risk to others. Is that a reference to the emails that I was taking you to a moment ago?
Yes.
Thank you. If we look at paragraph 44, you say the CAF assessment was used to identify AR's needs and the key goals going forward. The document identified AR's needs in respect of social communication, family dynamics, relationships, and accessing education. Is that right?
Yes.
What about the risks that AR posed to others?
So we were working through the early help plan in hopes that working through the social isolation and the education would support change at the early help stage. In that, CYJS and CAMS were working on the risk factors that he posed.
Would you nevertheless expect that to be noted and addressed as a risk and to identify who is dealing with it?
Yes, I acknowledge that bit was missed, but it was brought back up in the TAF meetings.
So you think there was a failure to address that in the
Assessments? Yes.
And does the fact that that was missed in the assessments and that your answers yourself say CYGS and CAMS were working on the risk factors that he posed means that you saw that there was no role for your team in relation to those risks?
There was no role for our team. We were an early help. We work with children and families to help them to make changes. I'm not saying that we don't have a role in identifying risk, but in terms of the actions, our actions were to work on helping AR to access education.
That's not very joined up, is it? Because the reason why I suggest that is when you and the family support workers were having direct engagement, to put it in the vernacular, you should be on the same page with CAMS and with the Criminal Youth Justice Service. So, for example, if the concern is that father is underplaying the seriousness of that, that's not something that should be tolerated by the CFW, is it?
No, so that's why they come to the TAF meetings. So CAMS came to the TAF meetings.
So it's not accurate to say that there's no role for your team in relation to those risks, because at the very least, your team would need to be supportive of the efforts being made by the agencies who are seeking to more directly deal with that risk.
I think that's the way I've said it. That isn't what I mean in terms of that. What I mean is that the actions for CFW, not that we don't have a role in risk, but the actions at that point in CFW are around education, social isolation and parenting.
If we could look at LCC 30306, please. LCC 30306. That doesn't look like the right document. Thank you. Let me try again. Is this a CAF assessment this time?
Yes.
All right, we're there. Now, on page 1, if we can highlight the reasons for the CAF assessment. The family were open at child in need level following an incident last year when AR had repeatedly taken a knife into school, and after having permanently excluded, he returned to school and assaulted another young person. AR was convicted, received a youth offending order, and has been working with them over the past year. Family were stepped down, and so on. So one sees here that on the plus side, there is still reference to the two sets of incidents, October 19 and December 2019. Would you agree?
Yes.
But would you also agree that we see here the start of dilution of the risk information?
Possibly, yes.
Well, is it possibly or is it yes? What's missing from here that was in the previous version?
In the CNF assessment,
Yeah. Let's not worry about the labels, but I showed you the early one for the first period. This is the second period. What is strikingly missing?
the information around the attack and
Specifically?
the referrals to prevent and the referrals to the CYJS and the work that's needed around that.
What about the intent to kill?
Yes.
So it's not possibly, there's a very clear problem
Yes.
with risk information being diluted. Is that right? You need to answer for the...
Yes, sorry.
And on page 3, could the entirety of the text please be highlighted? But it's under family and environmental factors that I want to look. Parents responded appropriately around the time of the incident last year. How could that be accurate?
They agreed to the prevent referral. They were engaged in the CNF assessment. They engaged in the support that was offered to them from Children's Social Care.
What had the school been warning about?
That was after the incident, but at the incident, the parents responded around the time of the incident last year. That was correct. At that point, I agree with you that after that, there was a lack of vocalisation about what he'd done, but at the point of...
There wasn't a lack of vocalisation about what he'd done. That's, I'm going to suggest to you, Ms. Barrett, that's mealy-mouthed.
Sorry.
It's mealy-mouthed. The school had raised
Yes.
concerns that the father was constantly downplaying the significance of what had happened. And that was on the records because there were endless emails where the school was making that point, saying that it increased the risk. So even if one sets aside the time point that you're making, even if one allowed for that, you'd expect to say parents responded appropriately around the time of the incident, but there's a major problem with father not recognising the seriousness of what happened and making excuses for his son.
Yes.
That would have been more accurate. And are you now aware that AR's mother, in the police interview, when AR laughed at inappropriate times and made inappropriate comments, was noted not to challenge it at all, and that behaviour was thought to be entirely inappropriate? Are you aware of that?
No.
So would you agree that this assessment, in terms of the risk to others, that the parents responded appropriately, was both superficial and at best highly incomplete,
Yes.
and at worst plain wrong? Yes?
Yes.
And then, if we look, please, at page 4, could we have the entirety of the text highlighted, please? The text in the top right. Forgive me. Sorry, I wasn't clear. AR, fourth paragraph, please, Ms. Barrett, if you would, help us with this. AR has involvement with the youth offending team regarding incidents of carrying knives and assault. Although it's relevant to mention this incident, it's not the main focus of this assessment. AR has shared that he's struggling with anxiety and he feels that previous professional involvement has focused on the incident of assault and carrying knives and that no one has thought about or supported him with his feelings and emotional well-being. Now, on one level, I'm sure you in particular would say that you agree with that. Is that right?
Yeah, that's his voice.
It's not just his voice, because it's also making a comment on the systems. It's saying that the incidents of carrying knives and assault are relevant to mention, but not the main focus of this assessment. That's not AR's voice, is it? That's a judgmental assessment.
Yeah, that we're talking about here and now.
Now, as I say, on one level, this is understandable because it's right to listen to what AR is saying, and one can understand that an element of the youth offending team are addressing those risks. Would you agree with that?
Yes.
Yeah. But do you see a second side in relation to this, that there is a risk in this of the CFW being too prepared to leave aside the issue of risk to others?
I do agree. It reads that way. That is not what the practice was, and that is not what was happening, but it does read that way, yes.
But if there'd really been an eye in the CFW team on those risks to others, you wouldn't have had that dilution, because constantly the assessments would have been, team, don't forget that this is a boy who said that he intended to use the knife to kill the perceived bully in circumstances where the school is saying there wasn't any bullying going on in the first place. Do you think that there has been something of a failure to keep an eye on, even if others are principally dealing with it, keep an eye on that issue of the risk to others?
I would say that through this assessment, yes, but through the work we were doing, no.
What work was done by your team specifically in relation to the risk of violence to others?
So we weren't, but we were talking about risk all the time in the staff meetings. We were talking about making sure that we were aware that prevent referrals might need to go in future if these behaviours were happening again.
We'll come back to prevent referrals. But in terms of AR voicing that he dislikes this focus on his own serious criminal activity, isn't there a risk that listening to that voice too much, albeit that you have to be a child-centred service, it is cutting off a valid area of inquiry and concern?
I think it's important that his voice is in that assessment. I think that's a very small part of the assessment, yes, but it's important that his voice is there. But there is a possibility that that can happen. Yes.
We've been going for an hour and a half.
Thank you, sir. So I'll break that.
Only if it's convenient.
No, it's not inconvenient. Thank you very much, sir.
We'll sit again at just after 15:15.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, Ms. Barrett. Ms. Barrett, we were dealing with the second period, and if we could just have back on screen LCC 30306. And if we can go now to page 5, please. Looking at the box under assess needs, could we just have that highlighted? The assessment is notes under health and well-being, the potential learning disability. I think that's meant to be a reference to the autism. We'll leave aside the technical description. But then supporting family life, issues associated with parenting, including managing behaviours, routine and structure within the family home. But it would be fair, wouldn't it, that this is where the miss that you did acknowledge before the break, that there's absolutely nothing there in terms of assessed need around vulnerability to reoffending, risks of knife crime, and the risks to others.
Yes.
And would this be right, that however much you may say that other agencies should be principally focusing on that and matters would be shared at the TAF, that is a CFW issue, because were AR to commit another serious crime, there would be knock-on implications for his welfare,
Yes.
because harming others in a significant way was likely to lead to a massive impact on him,
Yes.
potentially imprisonment
Yes.
at a young age. Yes?
Yes.
As happened. Sorry, we need it for the
Yes,
transcript.
sorry.
Nod your head. Thank you. Thank you. And you've set out, I think, consistent with that on page 7 of your statement. If we could just go back to that and please look at it with us, Ms. Barrett, very helpfully in your statement, page 7. To save us looking at it in documents, you very helpfully, I think, cut and pasted from this the action points. And I don't need to go through them all, but the action points that appear in the second row there, I think you would agree are all looking at those areas of assessed need. None of them directly relate to the risks of reoffending and the risk of harms to others.
Yeah, I agree.
And in paragraph 47 of your statement, so on the next page, page 8, please, Sarah, you say that your service was concerned about AR's poor school attendance and his social isolation. Then you say the school were also concerned about attendance and about AR's risks of reoffending, the potential for AR to carry and to use weapons.
Yes.
You say the TAF process is crucial as it allows all agencies to feed into the early help plan and inform other agencies what they think ought to be the key goals. Now, take that for the moment as read. But you then said the early help assessment considered these risks. Do you now want to amend that?
For that particular early help assessment, it wasn't in the action plan. It was mentioned in the early help assessment, but it didn't transfer into the action plan, and I think that needs to be acknowledged, yes.
Well, the early assessment as a whole didn't consider AR's risk of reoffending, the potential for him to carry and use weapons, did it? We've looked at that.
Yeah, so in the initial bit of it, it talked about his historical.
Yeah.
So it was referenced, but I agree, it wasn't, none of that was brought into the actual assessment or the action plan.
And your words were considered these risks. Reference to it is a matter of historical.
Yes, so I agree.
Yeah. Thank you. Moving on a little bit in time, you had one of your supervision records shortly after this, LCC 30391, please. So we can see that this is dated the So the date of the referral is the 14th. I think that's meant to be a reference to the 22nd to the 23rd of October 2020. I want to deal with the reflection section at the bottom, section 2. Could that just be expanded, please? So this is your words?
Yes.
Yep. So AR's very straight talking, knows his own mind, acknowledges feeling anxious, and so on. And then you go on to say towards the bottom of the page, when asked what he thinks will work, he's unsure. I think a simple and honest approach is best for AR, and it's clear he doesn't want to keep reliving the incident from last year. A person-centered approach is important here for AR to feel he has, and over the page, top of page 2, Sarah. A say, an influence on the support he's getting. This is doable at this stage as there are currently no safeguarding or criminal concerns. And then you see this, there are no safeguarding concerns in regards to parenting. AR, however, is a risk to himself as his way of dealing with injustice or what he feels is injustice can be extreme. Yacht are completing this piece of work. And you'll forgive me for banging the same proverbial drum, but the analysis here, you are picking up on this area of risk to others, but you are seeing even that through the lens of being a risk to himself, rather than the risk that AR might go out and stab other people.
So at that point yeah, I suppose that is, we're talking about him as safeguarding him and himself, yeah. I am thinking about that. I haven't written the fact it is a risk to others. We know he's a risk to others because that's what Yacht are doing and Yacht are doing that piece of work, but I could have written that into that supervision, yes.
And again, I'm trying to avoid the temptation to go back to points that I have put to you, but better practice would have been to be more joined up in that and to acknowledge that perhaps while we, CFW, need to be focused on AR and the risks to him, we need to be constantly aware that there are significant risks to others, and we need to make sure that we're supporting the work of the yachts in doing that. That would have been a better way to approach this. Would you agree?
Yeah, I'm just sorry, I need to read that last bit there. Yes, I agree.
Right, and then just after this report, if we go back to LCC 002302, the bottom of page 36, please, Sarah. It's the section at the bottom, and the learned chair will be familiar with this because we've taken other witnesses to it. Ms. Barrett, would you forgive me if I just give you the opportunity just to read that in your own time? If it's easier for me to read it out.
No, it's fine, yeah.
Just let me know.
Thank you. Yes.
All right, and if we can continue over the page, please. The print is very small, so if at any stage it's easier for me to read it out, just let me know.
Yes.
Now, these entries are, would you agree, concerning because it shows first of all, a concerning attitude on the part of Alphonse R, in that he is characterising the youth offending team as being an agency who is there to punish AR. And on any view, that is an unfair characterisation of their role. Would you agree?
Yes.
And it is a concerning entry or a concerning communication by Alphonse R, because he is being very directive, if not manipulative, as between agencies. He's really treating you as if you are some sort of counselling service to whom they have deigned to give personal information.
Yes.
And saying, because of that, you mustn't share this with the yachts, and we don't really want you disclosing stuff to school either, save perhaps some things that we choose.
Yes.
All right? First of all, in the context of the knife crime background and all the objective evidence of risk to others, so background information about school shootings, beheadings, knives carried to school, intention to carry knives, intention to kill. The father showing this approach and attitude of trying to direct what services can do should have been registering concerns for you and also for the whole team about increase in risks.
We talked to AR's dad about his concerns about the messages that he'd sent, and we made it clear that that wasn't our role, and we gained consent from that point. So, yes.
Ms. Barrett, you will forgive me, I hope, for making this observation, but it will help if you concentrate on my question and answer it. You may have had a discussion about it, and that may be context, but this should have been flagging up an increase in risk to you and your team, because he was seeking to manipulate and he was seeking to keep information away from the yachts. Do you agree with those points?
I can't speak for him, but it seems that that was the case, yes, at that point.
I'm not asking you to speak for him. You can see the message that he is delivering, and he is dismissive of the yachts, and this can fairly be interpreted as trying to direct agencies.
Yes.
A responsible father in this situation would be appalled at what his son has done and would be moving hell and earth, yes?
I agree.
To ensure that it didn't happen again, and would be working hand in glove with the yachts to try to make sure that it didn't happen again. Yeah? You don't need to be able to speak for AR's father to answer this question.
I agree. No,
Yes?
I
It's an increase in the risk. All right? Yes?
Yes.
Yeah. Thank you. So when one then looks at the response that is given to this, if we go on to page 37, and it's the Hi Alphonse entry, please, Sarah. Hi Alphonse, thank you for your message. I understand your concerns and fears, and I'll respond fully tomorrow, as I'm about to leave the afternoon and don't want to rush the response. I will not be sharing anything without your consent. I just want to reassure you that the process will only go forward if you and Letitia are happy and consent to it. You're able to withdraw consent at any time, including consent around information sharing. Concerns for the children's well-being and safety would be the only reason to have to share information with social care. Please rest assured that nothing either yourself or AR have shared causes any concern or worry about the children's well-being and safety. We only want to support you as a family unit. Now, there is, one must make allowance for the desire to keep the family on board and to keep an engagement with them. But certainly there in that initial message, there's a complete absence of any challenge to what I'm going to suggest to you was the completely inappropriate email from father.
The challenge came face to face. Andrea didn't have the time to do that challenge effectively, to help AR's father to understand what the concerns were and what we needed to do. And as I said previously, we did make that challenge and we did get consent from him then to share information.
It's not documented that these attitudes were directly challenged. There's no documentation of challenging his characterisation as the yacht as a body was there to punish. Did that really happen?
Yes, yes.
Did you tell the yachts that there had been a decline of consent?
No, because that decline of consent was for about 2 days, so we got consent back.
And when you got consent, did you tell the yachts that father had indicated that he viewed them as the agency who were there to punish his son?
I didn't personally tell Yacht that. That could have been a conversation that Andrea has had.
Well, we'll ask her about it. But given that this is an increase in the risk, shouldn't this have been very high on your agenda to warn the yachts that the father was showing a completely inappropriate attitude?
Yes.
If it was suggested that the records tend to suggest that that attitude was rather indulged by your team, what would you say?
I would say that your previous statement around trying to keep consent is really important. That's what we're trying to do. We're trying to keep a family engaged who we were struggling to engage with, and that if we'd have lost that consent, we wouldn't have been able to remain open.
Thank you. Ms. Pratt, I need to go to areas your evidence stands, your witness statement stands as part of your evidence, so you'll understand that I need to go to some areas as counsel to the inquiry where I have points of challenge and questions that have been raised by others.
Of course.
I don't want to move on in the chronology without acknowledging that within this period, in November, there's clear records that Miss Fontaine was carrying out work with AR around his relationship with his father. And so there are references to that in the notes, the same main notes at page 38 and page 39 for the 20th of November and the 2nd of December. So active engagement. There's a reference from you, Ms. Barrett, to that having appeared to have got somewhat stuck, so it wasn't easy work. The reference for that, sir, is page 39, the bottom entry.
Thank you very much.
But that then takes us against that background of interventions that did happen to paragraph 48 of your statement, page 8. And just wait for it to come up on screen. Bottom of the page, please. This was the incident you'll remember about the assault in January 2021. So AR had reported being assaulted by his father, but they'd not made a safeguarding referral. AR had admitted to kicking his father between the legs, at which point his dad hit him, almost as a reaction to being kicked between the legs. Father was very apologetic and understanding that hitting his son was wrong and unlawful. In fact, AR had contacted your team before to say that there had been this problem and this escalation. Are you aware of that?
So
Sorry,
Alphonse. Yes, I'm aware that it was reported to CYJS by AR. Alphonse had talked to us about it, yes.
Yes, but Alphonse had actually made the first contact before that. Do you want to look at it? Let's look at it very briefly. It's LCC 002302 at page 41. Mr. Goss rightly reminds me the reason why you may be perplexed is this is part of the late disclosure, I'm afraid, so you won't have seen it before.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Goss. LCC 002302, page 41. It's Alphonse called. It's the entry for Thursday, the 14th of January. You'll need to make it a bit bigger, I think, Sarah, because both Miss Barrett and I will struggle to with the fine print. All right. Just take it from me for the moment. That's on 41, and the entry that you refer to is on 42 afterwards. All right. So, in fact, with that extra late disclosure, we know that Alphonse phoned first, but you're right in other respects that this report came in. And the context of this, again, without going to a series of documents, was that father seems to have been trimming the plant near which AR's pet hamster had been buried, and it had effectively triggered, in some way, AR. He then was trying to get hold of his father's laptop to break it. And when father stands in the way, he's kicked in the testicles. And
Yes.
It was in the context of that there was a retaliatory, what seems to be a slap around the face. You say in paragraph 49 of your statement, with apologies for jumping around, but it's page 9, just while it's coming up on screen, you say in relation to this that as part of the work in facilitating change, when parents start trying to enforce parental changes, teenagers quite often do things like this. In the agency views, it was not over chastisement, it was reactionary by dad. He knew it was wrong, and he said that he wouldn't do it again. We made it clear that if anything like that happened again, we would be making a safeguarding referral. AR was aware that he could press charges if he wanted to. So a couple of aspects arising out of that. This didn't, in fact, arise at all out of an immediate attempt to enforce boundaries, did it? This wasn't Alphonse saying, AR, you must go to school or you must meet with this professional. It starts by him trimming a plant and AR, my words, kicking off.
Yes.
And it leads to a not insignificant assault when all that father was trying to do at that stage was stand in the way of criminal damage.
Yes.
Breaking his laptop. So it spoke, did it not, to AR's capacity, continued capacity for violence on the basis of a misguided view of being slighted.
Yes. The conversations happened with CYJS around that, around what the violence that had happened, and at that point a safeguarding decision was made between us both, between CFW and CYJS, to say that it actually didn't meet threshold for a referral to children's social care at that point, but it was considered.
But therein lies the problem, because even in the discussions with CYJS, to whom the disclosure has been made, that the focus wasn't on AR's risk to others and violence. It's should we make a safeguarding referral?
But the safeguarding referral would consider his risk to others as well, because that's the risk to him.
Well, if that's the case, why wasn't it made? Why wasn't the referral made on the basis to say, look, this is AR assaulting his father at the proverbial drop of a hat, and he hasn't learned to control his temper, and he is a risk to others. The outside observer looking at these records might be tempted to draw the conclusion that this was a blinkered approach, and that while in virtually, while in the vast majority of other cases, the child-centred approach, thinking about safeguarding risks, is your bread and butter, what you do all the time, what you're at work for. But here, the risk of AR being violent, again, is just being overlooked, isn't it?
The threshold at that point for a referral wasn't, to section 47 wasn't met.
No, but why is there no record to say at the time, we're not going to make this a section 47 referral, but this is deeply worrying in terms of AR's risk to others? Because, and we've taken the corporate witness for the yacht to that issue, and I'm now taking it to you. Your service wasn't making that observation either.
I think that we were looking at the relationship between AR and his father, and was our focus, and maybe, yes, we were blinkered in that action.
And you'll forgive me, Ms. Barrett, but even in your statement that we look at here, even after the attack, the focus in your statement is justifying why a safeguarding referral wasn't made in relation to the risks to AR over this, rather than reflecting, actually, we got this a bit wrong because this was a missed opportunity to recognise that AR was still prepared to use violence totally inappropriately, totally unjustifiably, when he perceived that he had been slighted. Do you now see that this was a missed opportunity?
It was considered in the talkings with CYJS. We were talking through the risk to AR and the risk that AR poses.
It was considered and it was discussed. What was done? What was done to intervene? Because this is the end of the referral order and nothing was done by CYJS. And I'm going to suggest that there was no intervention, nothing was actually done, talk and discussion.
It was considered that the plan that was in place around the building the relationships with AR and his father was still appropriate, and yes, possibly
Was anything further done, Ms. Barrett?
In addition to the plan, no.
You recall that when I took you to your supervision note from a few months earlier, you had recognised the risk that AR's extreme reactions to situations were a risk to himself, yes? And here, that played out. It wasn't anything like in December 2019, let alone in July. But that risk, which you had correctly identified that he could act in an extreme way, eventuated, but nothing further was done.
It seemed to us as professionals that those risks were reducing because of the plan that was happening. So, yes, he was doing things, but they were a reduction. So we wouldn't expect children that are working on a plan to stop behaviours straight away, because it's about facilitating change and helping change to occur. So we looked at that as being, yes, that's happened, but actually it's less than he had previously done, and therefore positive change was occurring.
But the risks generally seemed to be reducing and positive change was occurring, but there was no specific further intervention. There was no indication, for example, this is a problem because the yacht's work is coming to an end, so we need to put something extra in place to intervene in relation to this. Nothing like that.
The parenting strategies that we were developing and supporting the parents with were what we were seeing was hopefully going to help keep reducing that.
And instead of positive action being taken, within, I think, just over a fortnight of this, what was then beginning to happen?
I'm sorry, I'm unclear.
LCC 002302, the top of 43, bearing in mind that that assault was on the 14th of January. Top of the page, please. So just over 2 weeks later, Andrea Fontaine Hi, Alphonse. I hope things have been okay this past week. Could you please let me know the name of the GP surgery AR is registered with? So they're asking for the information on the CAMS referral. Also, I need to come on a final visit with you before closure.
So again, we're a time-limited service at that point.
So mine's made up to close.
The plan that was in place had come to an end, and we were a time-limited service at that point.
Yeah, mines were made up to close. I think you can give a yes, no.
Yes.
And that's despite the fact that when that news is broken to Alphonse, in contrast to what happened in the previous period, where Alphonse was happy during the lockdown period not to have contact to leave it to September, he objects, doesn't he?
Yes.
Yeah. So in the middle of what's on the screen at the moment, you can see him saying, will you still remain with us on other things? And further down, I didn't know that your service is time constrained. I thought that your service stays indefinitely. As you probably know, we'll still need your service, especially AR. Your professional perspective helps him learn. In every situation, what to say, that's how he learns. That's doing house chores is not slavery, or running errands around the house is not favour. These kind of concepts. I think you are leaving too soon. Not to say that I want social services to get involved, but to have a community-based agency like yours would have helped him immensely. Whatever other criticisms may need to be explored with Alphonse are, he was asking for the continued support of CFW, but indicating he doesn't want social workers involved, yes?
Yes.
And that's a couple of weeks after there's been a not insignificant domestic assault,
Yes.
of which your service was fully aware.
Yes.
And then on top of that, LCC 001510, please. LCC 001510. Page 2, please. The very next day, Miss Fontaine Smith is copied in to the school, from the school making the second prevent referral. And it looks like the attachment was copied in, and this is the second prevent referral in relation to the Colonel Gaddafi post. Yes?
Yes.
And then 2 days after that, LCC 002302 at page 43. At the final visit, it's the entry for the 4th of February, the one 2/3 of the way down the page, please, Sarah. Ms. Fontaine Smith, here at the final visit, gets the news that AR has now had his autism diagnosis. Yes?
Yes.
I don't overlook that at the bottom of the page, as it is at the screen at the moment, both Alphonse and AR feel that things have improved and have settled significantly. They've taken time to reflect on the incident last week and are moving forward. It wouldn't be right that I overlook that. But here is another incident of significant development in that he's got his diagnosis. And one notes that AR, in just above the passage that Sarah's very kindly highlighted, in addition, AR was saying that he doesn't believe he has autism and he's been misdiagnosed. Yes?
Yes.
So, significant assault, a prevent referral, and a new autism diagnosis, of which AR is not accepting. And what happened in the face of all of that, so far as the CFW was concerned?
We closed. The agencies that were identified to support AR at that time were specialist agencies, and they had their action plan in place at our point of closure.
Is that not suggest that this was unduly, I'm going to suggest wholly unduly, process-driven?
At that point, yes.
Just wait. That we've created these actions. These particular actions have been completed. Therefore, we're going to close.
At that point, yes. The service is very different now, but at that point, absolutely.
So you understand that the learned chair is looking for you to be candid. This was the wrong decision.
It was
It may have been typical of its time, but it was the wrong decision.
Yes, I agree.
And did that happen in the culture at the time because of the resource pressure to close cases?
Yeah, we were a time-limited service, so therefore, at that point, yes.
And do you think that there was also a culture of seeing it as too process-driven? You create an action, you say that it's signed off.
Yes.
Because at LCC 4093, and thank you for your evidence on that, but if we look at LCC 4093, and if we go to, we see that this is the early help plan, now amended, I think, to show what's been done. So if you go to page 2, we see in relation to this that what is being reported is improvement in communication and behaviour in the home. Yes?
Yes.
That's in the face of the emails only just received that he felt that the closure would be too soon.
Yes.
And would you agree that this is a selective approach? It's choosing the positives and opting not to put the negatives on the form.
It was very action plan driven, yes.
That might be right, but it's not an answer to my question. Negatives were being missed off the form.
So there would be TAF notes that go along with this plan, but on the plan, yes, I agree.
No mention of prevent, the prevent referral.
So the TAF meeting happened before the prevent referral, is my understanding.
Yeah, but in the justification for closure, there is no mention of the prevent referral.
I wasn't aware of the prevent referral when the prevent referral was made, I don't think, straight away. I think that went to Andrea.
I'm not interested for the moment in the fine detail between you and Ms Fontaine-Smith as to whether it was passed on or not. Are you saying that it wasn't passed on by her to you?
I can't remember. Right. I can't remember.
You've seen that she was emailed about it?
Yes.
And it doesn't get mentioned here. In signing off all of these actions, it doesn't say this has been done, but there's been a concerning development because there's been a fresh prevent referral by school.
So as far as I can see, this is the action plan from the last TAF meeting, which is different to the closure form.
All right, well, let's try LCC 4096. Because I'm afraid it's exactly the same pattern.
Okay.
Middle of the page, please.
Yeah, I agree. You're right.
Alphonse is more receptive to engaging with school and health professionals for support, direct work to support positive relationship building, sessions with Alphonse. There have been improvements in their relationship. Alphonse now recognises the appropriate point to walk away from conflict. Alphonse reports that there's a great improvement in the atmosphere at home and in his relationship with Axel. It's selective. It is selective.
Yes, yes.
Yeah. Because Alphonse reports that there's been a very recent improvement in the atmosphere at home, but we should notice concern that there was a significant assault in the home just a few weeks ago. Might have been a fair summary and a fair reflection. So when I say that the negatives are missed out, can you now accept that that is exactly what was happening? Because you said, well, you're taking me to the plan, but that's not the closure report. I'm now taking you to the closure report.
Yes.
Is the prevent referral referenced here?
No.
Is the fact that having waited for over a year for the diagnosis, is the fact that AR was not accepting of his diagnosis mentioned? Or is what was selected only the fact that the diagnosis has been received?
Just that the diagnosis had been received.
Why was this happening? Why are only the limited positives and not all the negatives being picked out in the closure reports which you supervise, Ms. Barrett?
Because they're attached to the plan, and it was plan focused.
And that led here and elsewhere to a significant failure in a proper analysis of the risks that AR pose to other people.
Other agencies were involved who were aware of the situations, and their plan was more specialist. We're an early intervention service that's not specialist, and they were working on those areas. But when you look at it here in front of me, yes.
The third period of involvement was about seek your assistance with that if you can help us, please. So this is now with Louise Lewis. It's September 21 to March 22. The background to this, just to help you with the context, is that it comes back about 7 months later, and you'll remember that it was on a step down from children's social care, yes?
From a needs assessment, yes.
Yeah, and that was because, as you say, I think Father had requested a Section 17 statutory assessment for the two brothers.
Yes.
Thank you. In terms of your direct involvement in this, there was a case, perhaps we could look at paragraph 65 of your statement, where we see page 11 of your statement, paragraph 65. That Alphonse asked you to attend the TAF meeting in October 21, and I think recognising a positive aspect of your own involvement, he saw you as something of a constant. And
yes.
Although there'd been a change in the family support worker, you brought an element of continuity of care. Would that be right?
Yes, I do think there was an element of hierarchy as well, that he felt that he was more heard. Yeah.
And were you alive to the risk of being somewhat manipulated in that, in that that Alphonse would deliberately target you in the sense of seeing you as the decision maker and perhaps to some extent start cutting out the family support worker.
Yeah, which is the conversations I had with him, and explained that it's not appropriate for me to come out and do direct work with
Thank you.
with the
And
family.
consistent with that, Ms. Barrett, I think you in fact didn't attend this meeting and no doubt appropriately left it to Ms. Lewis. Ms. Lewis, on any view, found it difficult at times with her evidence yesterday,
Yeah.
and one understands that. How did she rank in terms of experience at the time relative to others?
Very experienced. She's worked with children and families for nearly 30 years. She's since 17 years old. She's now almost 49, I think. She worked with children's social care as a family support worker.
Looking at the records by this stage, certainly relative to the previous two, you seem to have more direct involvement, attend more meetings, do things yourself. Was there a reason for that?
I think my way of working, I was developing my way of working and how I felt that I wanted to be as a manager. And I wanted to be able to have more oversight and understand where people were and what they were saying and what they were doing, so that I could have a better understanding of families at that point.
Thank you. In terms of the handover of information, you would be aware, obviously, of the case from your previous involvement.
Yes.
The risks that were identified, again, I can go to a document if you want me to, but perhaps you'll take it from me. But the risks that were identified at this stage were low education attendance, leading to low attainment, poor future outcomes, relationship breakdown, which could lead to a family split.
Yes.
Does that sound right?
Yes.
So the reference for that is LCC 002302 at page 46 to 47.
Thank you.
Thank you. There was a further assessment conducted. Why would there have to have been a further assessment?
I felt it was important to get AR's brother's voice to find out if there was anything happening within the family, to see if there was anything that we'd missed, if the assessment had missed anything, because DR's voice wasn't really heard in the assessment, the needs assessment that was carried out by the social worker.
The assessment that was done is dated the 1st of November. This had first come in to the social care team back in June. That seems to be a long time to lead to this type of assessment, June to the 1st of November. Was that typical?
So did it come from children's social care to us from June to November? Is that what?
The assessment by Ms. Lewis is dated the 1st of November, and the referral in the Section 17 request was in June. Is that a long period of time for it to have reached this stage?
To reach us?
Yeah, and for this type of assessment to be done, the CAF assessment.
I'm really unclear, because it's two sort of assessments that we're talking about.
I understand that. Looking at the process as a whole,
Yes.
I appreciate that there are two teams, and I appreciate that there are two assessments that are done. But in terms of the assessment that then puts action in train, it's taken from June to November to establish the team who are going to take action and the assessment from which the action is going to lead. That seems a long period of time.
So when what date did it step down from children's social care to us?
It's the tail end of September.
So at that point, we would have been carrying out the actions on the from children's social care. The additional information was being gained at that point, so it wasn't that we were just leaving it. We had identified a worker, the worker was there. It was to gain any additional information to make sure we hadn't lost that voice and what could be happening. It was an extra person in there that could be telling us what's going on.
Thank you, I follow. And then if we look at that assessment, please, LCC 300321. If we look at the bottom of page 1, please. To be fair to Ms Lewis, and I explored this with her, she does record some of the relevant history. October 2019, 2 previous referrals relating to AR's behaviour responses to being bullied at school. Second, due to physically assaulting an innocent pupil in school with a hockey stick, carrying a knife, and concerns regarding him viewing inappropriate and violent extremist material before beginning assessed for support under Children and Family Wellbeing Service. So some relevant information is captured then, but we do see, don't we, the gradual dilution of the risk-relevant information.
So this has now come from a needs assessment from social care.
That might be so, but could you deal with the question? Wherever it has come from, this is the information that's coming to your service, and this is the explanation of risk that is being carried out. It's simple. There's no reference here to the intention to use the knife. That if you remember, the first one that you supervised was in the forms.
Yes.
So you may say, well, this has come from social care and we're reflecting that. But nobody has gone back to the first referral and pulled that back out and say, remember, he intended to kill with the knife.
Yes.
Thank you. It doesn't set out the issue that we were looking at a few moments ago, the January 21 assault, does it?
No.
You, as the supervisor, were aware of those issues. Would you have remembered them?
Yes.
When we took Ms Lewis to some of these matters, she, and it's on the transcript, I'm not just interpreting it, I said you looked surprised when I raised a number of issues, and she accepted that she wasn't aware of them. Shouldn't you, as the supervisor, have been improving these, because you were the continuity of care, to say, this may be what's come from social care, but actually there's some important background information. This was worse than this summary, and we've got to keep this in mind.
I would disagree with Miss Lewis. We have had conversations, we had handover visits, and I went to the first visit with her, and following that first visit had discussions around that visit and actions that needed to be taken because of the history of the case.
On page 2, one need that was identified, bottom of the page, please, Sarah, was a prevent risk of radicalisation. You see out there under safeguarding. Now, Ms Barrett, it's important that I be careful to be fair to you here, because there is, on any view, a highly significant entry that related directly to you, which was not contained in the disclosure which your employer gave to the inquiry or to Merseyside Police, and the inquiries looked at that. But what I want to put on record is that when you drafted your witness statement, I don't think that you would have had access to that information. So if there's any part of your statement that you now need to amend in relation to these topics, you must just say so. Absolutely. And we'll make allowance for the fact that you didn't have access to that record. Do you follow?
Yes.
Thank you. Thank you. If we go to that record at LCC 002302 at page 48, I hope that this won't be completely new to you and that your attention's been drawn to it in recent days. So could we highlight and expand as best you can, please, the Monday, 4th of October entry, Sarah? It's the one that takes up the top third. We can see that this was a home visit. greeted by mum and so on, spoke with AR and his thoughts about where he's at with school, and AR informed that he wasn't attending and wouldn't share why he was not attending, saying, "Not until Alphonse does what I've asked him." AR wouldn't elaborate. Alphonse was asked by the worker, and that's likely to be a reference to Miss Lewis, yes?
Yes,
Although I think you were in attendance.
I was, yes.
Yeah. You don't need to tell them you don't have my permission. It was clear that Alphonse wanted to share. However, Mum also didn't want him to say anything, saying AAA, waving her arms and indicating a zip action across her mouth. AR was informed that he has a duty to attend school, warned about the potential repercussions of that, and we asked Miss Lewis about that. AR didn't seem bothered, and that he makes his own money via the internet. AR was asked to share what he was doing to make money. He refused, saying, "You don't need to know." Ms. Lewis highlighted to AR that this can become a cause for concern. AR stated, "It's fine, it's not illegal." AR wouldn't allow parents to share. Then there's a discussion about the CFW support and what can be offered and what could help him. Now, before we get on to the latter part of this note, that at the time, again, would have been concerning, yes?
Yes, and it was talked about and discussed with the family in the next session.
Yeah, but it's a sign of increase of risk in a number of ways. So first of all, AR here is being very dominating and manipulative.
Yes, he had that way of communicating with people, definitely, when he didn't want to share something or didn't want to talk about something.
Yeah, but he's dominating the narrative. He's controlling it.
At that point,
and he's
yes.
manipulating it by, in what sounds like firm tones,
Yeah, at that
telling
point.
his own parents not to share information with the service he's meant to be helping the whole family.
At that point, yes.
And it goes on to indicate later on, we can see how Ms. Lewis used her skills offering the youth council, and I dealt with that with her. But there's a reference to warning about how what AR was saying, if it was said in the wrong environment, may put AR in a compromising position. Can you remember what it was that led Ms. Lewis to say, if you say that in a different environment, it may put you in a compromising position?
So he was very sporadic in what he was saying, but he was talking about why different governments don't get punished for things when certain governments do, how governments work, what kind of, why people have affiliation, why do certain countries affiliate with other countries, what goes on in the world, why do people have a really bad vision of the Taliban when there's other governments like the American government who go into countries and can hurt people. He was basically talking about lots of different policies and procedures around what the governments were doing within England. He was saying about, there was all sorts of things coming out, but it was very sort of like scattergun and sporadic in what he was saying.
All right. Then we see that later on in returning to it and talking about the sharing of information and what the rules were, he starts talking about MI5 and MI6, how they can access the data from social care or from CFW. And this led to him being very vocal on politics, American government and the Taliban.
Yes.
And for what you're saying, it's talking about a sort of political discussion, yes?
Yes, but not extremist in its in what he was saying. It was asking questions rather than giving.
Right, but he was expressing certain views, and I'm not suggesting that he was directly voicing approval for terrorism, but in the political points that he was making, he was contrasting what the Taliban did and presumably their negative publicity the Taliban get, and saying they're treated differently to the American government who do similar things.
Yes.
That's what I've taken from your
Yes.
answer. So to that extent, he was showing no criticism of the Taliban and comparing them to the situation of the US and saying that it was unfair.
I would say it was more questioning at that point. It was very questioning and it was very scattergun.
Did you ever get to the bottom of how AR was making money on the internet?
I believe it was doing internet searches for families, so people.
Did you learn that before the attack or subsequently?
Before the attack.
Are you sure about that?
Yes, I think so. So I think he was looking at family tree and doing something with family trees or something like that. But parents were saying that it wasn't unsupervised, that everything that he was doing was supervised online.
Because in paragraph 69, if we can come away from what's on the screen, please, Sarah, and just go back to paragraph 69 of your statement at page 12, all that you say in relation to internet activity so LCC, page 12, 69. I only saw AR on his computer on one occasion, and there was no concerning content as he showed me what he was looking at.
Yes.
He would use his computer downstairs and would have whatever he was viewing in plain sight of the family.
Yes.
Was that on the occasion when he showed you what he was looking at?
So when I was up, no, it was just through conversation. So I've not seen what he was doing, just through conversation, that's what was explored.
It looks like there was no detailed assessment of what he was doing on the internet at all. One occasion where he showed you, and an assumption from the layout that he would have been in plain sight. What about when he used his tablets in his bedroom?
We were told that he wasn't using his tablets in his bedroom.
Was he a credible young man?
We were told by family as well that he wasn't using his tablets in his bedroom.
Were they being open with the service at all times?
Sorry?
Were they being open with the service at all times?
At the point that we were having those discussions, I felt that we had a good relationship with the family who were being open and honest with us at the time. Obviously, from what's come from the inquiry, that wasn't happening, and there was things that weren't shared with us. But at that point, I didn't have any reason not to believe that. Everything that I was shown was pointing in that direction.
Given that in the months immediately prior to that, he downloaded an academic article twice.
That was at school.
Containing the Al-Qaeda training manual. It wasn't at school, it was at home.
I wasn't aware that it was at home.
So whatever access you had, and whatever visibility you had, it wasn't sufficient at all to understand, even begin to understand what he was doing in the period of this referral.
No,
Al-Qaeda training manual, January 22, purchasing rice and seeds.
Oh, yeah. Yes, so I am aware of that. That's come from the inquiry story. I thought you meant about the prevent referral. I thought that's what you were talking about. We didn't have any access to his internet. We weren't able to look on his internet. What we were being told and what we were seeing was that he wasn't having internet usage without oversight of an adult.
Yeah. Well, would it be fair to say you took that at face value?
Yes, it would, because we weren't seeing anything that would suggest otherwise.
All right. Back to the Taliban issues and the political discussion. If we look at paragraph 66 of your statement, at the time that you wrote this statement, Ms. Barrett, again, making all fair allowances, you said on the 12th of October, I copied an email to Louise that listed prescribed terrorist groups and received, that you'd received from the CFW Quality Review Service. If we look at that, LCC 30977, please. Mm-hmm. Right, we see the round robin on prescribed groups that gets forwarded on, and then you are saying clearly to Ms. Lewis, clearly in the individual context of AR's case, think we need to look at this with AR's parents.
Yes, but that was based on...
Wait for the question.
Sorry.
That must have arisen, I suggest, coming just 8 days afterwards from the home visit?
So that was based on the history of what I knew, what he'd been doing, and yes, some of the things that he'd been saying, but not in terms of, I think it needs to be done here and now. Professional curiosity in terms of looking at what can we do to mitigate against this in the future if it does arise, because we've had a person that's done this in the past, and we need to look at what happens if he is doing this again in the future. And parents need to be part of that.
Ms. Burt, you have to forgive me. I didn't realise that this would be difficult. On the 4th of October, AR mentions the Taliban to you. On the 12th of October, you are forwarding a list of terrorist-prescribed organisations to your more junior colleague, saying that it needs to be discussed with his parents. That is because the Taliban had been raised the week prior in the discussion.
I disagree. It's about history. It's about me doing my job, about me understanding what could be happening. It wasn't around the risk that I perceived at that point, because he was just asking questions. So we were looking at, okay, what does that mean? What could that mean? Not that this is something that's happened.
Of course, you would have the background history of risk in mind. You'd be criticised if you didn't have that. But the trigger for sending this would have in significant part been that conversation just a little earlier than a week ago. That must be right, surely.
But in terms of future protection and possible need to discuss things, yes, rather than the immediate need for a response because it was around is questioning.
Please try to focus on the question. I haven't yet got to how significant the risk was, whether it was immediate or in the future. Could you just please deal with the question? This arose directly out of AR mentioning the Taliban in a meeting not a week before, on the background of knowing about earlier prevent referrals and knowing about concerns about extremism.
Yes, but for future protection.
And if we look at LCC 002302, please. Forgive me. Sorry, that's a wrong reference. Thank you. LCC 30780. LCC 30780. And if we could go to page 2, please. 2 days later, you're saying in this email to Deb Cardwell, who I think was the senior in the targeted youth support team,
yes,
that referring to having the case in on a step down. Also, for your information, although the step down did not identify this, there are some concerns about how extreme some of AR's views are and the risks that this could pose. So we may also need to refer to prevent.
yes. So that again is that future, making sure that somebody who's coming into working with AR is aware of the past, aware of how extreme, not extremist, but extreme some of his views are, and how that might be a risk factor for future work. So for future things that he does, and making sure that that worker's aware that if that does arise, we immediately need to do a referral to prevent, not that we need one there and then.
So why had the assessed needs included prevent?
Because prevent referrals open at that point, or we were told there was a prevent referral open at that point, and we didn't have the outcome of that. So I needed to chase the outcome of that prevent referral.
On the face of this, you are recording and warning others about how extreme some of AR's views are, and you're indicating that we may also need to refer to prevent.
Yes, may need to. But it was seen that at that time it wasn't needed because what was being said wouldn't have met the markers for prevent, but we were aware that there's been prevent referrals in the past.
Why wouldn't they have met the markers for prevent, please, Ms Barrett?
Because he wasn't expressing any ideologies, he wasn't expressing anything that was like concerning round it. He was talking about, he was asking questions about why. Why does the world work? What is happening here? What's happening there? And why? At that point.
How had a view been formed that he'd shown left-wing extremist behaviours?
Sorry?
How had a view been formed that he had shown left-wing extremist behaviours?
From where?
LCC 30321, page 1. At the bottom, forgive me, Sarah, just stay with it for the moment, just so you can see. This is an early help assessment, all right, so you can see the document that I'm taking you to. And then if we go, please, to the last 3 paragraphs at the bottom of the page. Penultimate paragraph, there's been concerns in relation to AR's extreme thoughts around what is going on in the world, and that's consistent with political discussion. I'm not disputing with you for a moment that it was a political discussion, and politics which could, it doesn't quite scan, but AR could put, I think it's meant to be, AR at risk of being involved in left-wing extremist behaviours.
Yes, could put him at risk.
And
Yes.
please focus on the question.
But at the point...
Would you just pause? Rather than thinking about where I'm going in my questioning, and then being perhaps, what is a matter for the chair, defensive about it, could you focus on what I'm asking you? Here, what is recorded is could put. I'm not interested in the could put, I'm just correcting the typo for you. Could put AR at risk of being involved in left-wing extremist behaviours. Where did that come from?
I believe that was from the initial prevent referral that was still pending at the time that we got this. So as far as we were aware, there was a prevent referral that was there, but we didn't know the outcome of that.
But that Ms Lewis had been copied into that, and that related to Colonel Gaddafi.
I don't know.
Sorry, Ms Fontaine had been copied into that, and that related to Colonel Gaddafi, the second one.
So this is around a third prevent referral.
And that related to the London Bridge attack and discussion about MI5 and MI6. So none of those related to left-wing extremists at all.
Then I don't know.
And as you've indicated in your answer, your understanding at this time was AR was still open to prevent. Is that right? That this was still being considered?
We didn't have the outcome of the referral at that point, no.
Was it your understanding that the referral at this stage was still open?
We didn't know. It came
from...
What
was your understanding?
So from the report from Children's Social Care, so the records in Children's Social Care said that it was still with prevent at that time. It was an ongoing assessment.
So your understanding was that the referral was still open to prevent?
Like an ongoing assessment.
Yes?
Yes.
It's in your own statement. I'm reading from your statement. I don't know why you're disagreeing. All right. And the outcome not known?
At that point, it was not known, yeah.
So, given that you thought that this was an open prevent referral and not known, why didn't you feed this information in to prevent? I'm not suggesting that he was voicing outright support for the Taliban. It was a political discussion, but within that, he was contrasting the treatment of the Taliban and saying that how people treated them was unfair compared to the US government.
I was chasing up that referral and I found out it was closed, so that was I was looking at it and I asked.
All right. So if you've chased up that referral, why not tell? You've been very careful in your evidence to say other agencies were looking at this. This was the yachts, that would be for Prevent. You've got risk information here. You're not the expert in gradating that, are you, as to how concerning that is, his references to the Taliban?
There was reference to the Taliban, but it wasn't. There was reference to lots of things, and he was asking lots of questions.
On the back of his previous risks, that has led you to circulate the list of prescribed terrorist organisations. There is a reference to Prevent in the assessed needs. You thought it appropriate to warn that the youth targeted support team about this and the need to be on alert. So if you thought it was open, the obvious thing to do is to add it as a piece of information you might want to be aware. And if it had been closed, the obvious thing to do is to tell the counter-terrorism police, appreciate you've just closed this, but you should be aware of this. That was your duty, Ms. Barrett. There's many other pieces of information at many different stages that could have been given to Prevent, and it may seem that I'm being unfair.
No,
it isn't the reality that it's the simple position that this is information that should have been shared with the counter-terrorism police. It could have been a useful piece of the jigsaw.
It could have.
And as the supervisor, it was your duty to ensure that it happened.
Yeah.
Thank you. We know that shortly after this period, there was an escalation in behaviours. So within the month of November, 4 episodes of violence within the home, all right? One at the beginning in which the police are called, one at the end in which the police are called, 2 at the weekend in the middle where the police aren't called, but violence in the form of throwing milk over father is used. Were you aware of those in general terms?
Yes.
At this stage? Thank you. As we get to the end of that, there were then I think coming towards the end of November, were you aware of some difficulties in the relationship between Mr. Coughlin and the family, being very demanding about services, about his appointment times?
Mr.
Carl Coughlin, the targeted youth support worker. Yeah.
Yes.
And what did you make of those in terms of how Alfonso was responding to those?
There was a large distance to travel for the family, so I do believe that there was some relevance to him saying that, and I think that was important, that we need to be working with children to meet with them and be with them without expecting a 45-minute drive from the family. So I, at that point, agreed. However, I do think there was some pushback again as well.
Yeah, so there were logistical difficulties in relation to
Yes.
that. But a fair assessment of that would be that Alfonso was seen to think that in cases where AR hadn't gone to school, that was the start of the problem, and Mr. Coughlin had made arrangements to meet AR either at school or in a location nearby, that he should then make very short notice arrangements to come back to the family home to do the appointment.
Which isn't appropriate, no.
Yeah. And I think he was challenged about that,
Yes.
would you agree? We then come to the TAF meeting on the 7th of December, and without going to a document to prove a negative, would you accept that at that TAF meeting in the 7th of December, there was no discussion at all about the episodes of violence, the 4 episodes of violence that had happened in November?
Yes.
Why was that?
If it wasn't discussed in the TAF, it wouldn't have been something that was noted down. So the TAF members obviously haven't spoken about it.
And in terms of that risk to others, again, you're saying, well, we may not have done things, but the TAF is where other agencies are present. Again, looking back on it and being reflective, isn't that concerning that those risks weren't raised at that time?
Yes.
And when we come then to the period of January through to March, I'm going to try to summarise this without going to each of the documents, but if you want me to, I'll take them, but I will seek to summarise them fairly. At the start, in January, there seems to be an indication that's been given that when the targeted youth support has ended, and those sessions have come to the end, that there will be closure from level 3.
Yes.
Yes? And that is then backed up in the February TAF and the March TAF, where that plan is put into effect. Do you agree?
Yes.
And that is happening. Is this right? Despite those concerns that had arisen in October and November, so the concerning political discussion in October and the violence in November don't seem to have distracted the CFW from that course again of closing it down.
We were seeing a reduction in risk at that point. He was going to school. He was engaged in community activities, and both AR and...
He wasn't going to school at that time. This is the end of the Acorns period, where he's totally disengaged from that school, or nearly totally disengaged. And it was to the contrary effect, because what had been agreed was that they brought forward the transition to Pressfield,
Yes.
which was the new school that he was going to go to.
Yes.
But that's a massive transition, isn't it?
It is.
Yeah, it's starting a new school as a specialist autistic provision. And again, when you look at those cumulative factors of the political discussion, the violence in the home, not just once, not a one-off incident, but 4 times, and then there's going to be a transition, it looks again like a process-driven decision rather than actually looking at the totality of what was going on.
So at that point, it was a process-driven, because when we've come to the end of an action plan, we would step across to level 2 services that hold the rest of the actions.
Thank you.
That doesn't happen anymore.
I follow. It was then just 3 days after the closure, the bus incident on the 17th of March. You're familiar with that incident now?
Yes.
It's reported that AR had gone missing, that he'd contacted the police. Were you made aware of that at the time? We know that Miss
I was, but me personally, I was not in work. Our agency was made aware through an email. So an email was sent. So we were made aware via email.
Yeah. CAM's also notified, not you personally then, but the service. And if we could look at LCC 30966. We did ask Ms Lewis about this, but I need to seek your assistance. Yeah. So this is, as Ms Lewis accepted, before AR had been reported as having been found. So she's received a phone call from Alphonse R that he's gone missing. So I'm aware that AR has gone missing, and this is to CAMS. You're copied in.
Yes.
Alphonse has acted appropriately by contacting the police, and that is the only advice we could give. There was a high chance following the meeting last week that this may happen, as Alphonse made it clear that he didn't want the support to cease. Can you help us to understand that and why it was being said?
Why that there was a link, I can't answer. I don't know.
No.
No,
AR has gone away from home, gone missing. And on the face of things, if that's all that's known at this stage, that's AR going missing, yes? Mm-hmm. And yet what seems to be being imputed is, by Ms Lewis, there was a high chance of this happening following last week, as Alphonse made it clear that he didn't want the support to cease. I mean, one might read into that some sort of concern that this has been almost engineered by Alphonse to prove the point that it shouldn't have been ceased, whereas what's happened is that AR has run away from home on the face of things.
I don't know.
It's a bizarre thing to say.
I don't know.
It's a bizarre thing to say, isn't it?
Yeah.
As agreed in the meeting by all professionals, there was no outstanding work from CFW level 3 and for the family to be supported. The case is closed to CFW after the meeting. Moving forward, I'm unsure of what other support can be offered to them other than what's already in place, as parents need to be positively encouraging AR to attend following any advice from school and so on. If you feel the needs of the family meets level 3, however, this one incident currently would not meet threshold as parents acted appropriately calling the police. Mm-hmm. Would you agree that the whole tone of this email is putting up a barrier to the case coming back to your team?
It wouldn't be the decision for us to make that decision for it to come back in anyway. The process is that it has to be.
No, but answer the question. When what Ms Lewis is saying is this one instance currently would not meet the threshold, that's hardly saying do refer it back into us because this is concerning. It's the opposite. This one incident of him going from home when parents have phoned the police won't meet the threshold. We've done all the work that we can.
So at that point, it was we were aware it was a missing from home, nothing else, and parents had followed.
So it's too early to judge. That's in a sense the whole point. Why are these judgments being made when AR hasn't even been found? There's been no assessment of why he'd left home. That this won't meet a threshold. How could she possibly say?
I don't know.
See, what I suggest to you, and it can't be a criticism of you because it's not your email, but what I suggest to you is that this is characteristic of a problem with the culture of wanting to close cases down and not take cases on. Because at this stage, notwithstanding the awful acts that AR perpetrated in July, at this stage, he's a missing from home kid. And your service didn't know what had happened to him. And yet the whole tone of this email is not for us.
I agree, that's how it reads.
And would you agree that that was a cultural problem? Not suggesting for a moment it was your responsibility, you alone, but such supervision as you had given to Ms Lewis doesn't seem to have instilled a more appropriate view by her.
Yeah, it was if the actions are met, we close the case at that point. That has changed.
Thank you. If we could have on screen, please, LCC 30910. There's been an acceptance of shortcomings by the social worker within MASH in relation to this. But if we if we can just go to page 2. A referral has come back in from AR. I know you were the family support worker could see this is just closed. I know you've completed work with family, but just wanted to make you aware. I think it was regarding frustration with Instagram account. And we know that, in fact, as I'm sure you now know, that AR was found on a bus with a knife and had referred to poison. And none of that in terms of risk information is being conveyed here. It's only in relation to the Instagram account. Just go back to page 1. Ms Lewis then at the bottom of the page explains, thank you for sharing the information. And I'm not going to go through the email, but it's exactly the same as the earlier email, isn't it? It's giving a lot of reasons why the job of the CFW was seen as being done.
Yes.
Yep. And if we go to the top of the page, somebody else, team manager in Della Heaton, yeah,
Yes.
saying thanks to it's closed to LV2 smiley face. And then Ms Lewis, thanks Della, just found out now, I knew this would happen. Again, knew what would happen.
I don't know.
In relation to this, I think it's right, you tell me if I've misunderstood this, but I think it's right that CFW couldn't unilaterally just reopen a case. There would need to be a referral or consideration. Is that right?
Correct, yes.
So I'm not suggesting that you or Ms Lewis should have immediately just reopened the case. But what is, I suggest, lacking here is any professional curiosity, because throughout all of the records and the emails, there's not a single question asked by CFW about what had actually happened when he was found.
So we're not open at that point, so we've got no consent to work with the case. It wouldn't come into us. It goes in through our MASH cash process.
Are you seriously suggesting that as a supervisor, or Ms Lewis as a family support worker, couldn't send an email in response to having been told that he's gone missing from home, simply saying, the case is closed to us at the moment, but given our previous dealings, is there anything of which we should be aware?
That isn't the process.
Well, it may not be the process, but that wasn't the question. That could have been done, and that would be reflecting a professional curiosity.
But we wouldn't be able to write it on the notes, even if we did, because we weren't open, so we don't have consent to write on the child's file at that point.
No, but forget the notes. And again, it reflects the process-driven mentality, I suggest. If somebody from your team had simply, for example, contacted the police and said, what was the outcome of this? Or asked the MASH, can you give us some more details? Forget the fact that you couldn't record it on the notes. You'd have been put in the picture, potentially, that involved carrying a knife on a bus, saying that he wanted to stab somebody, and it would have given rise to knowing about poison. There may not have been a process for it, but you could have asked the question.
I don't feel that we would have been able to ask the question. That's what I'm saying. I'm saying that the processes aren't there to be able to ask that question because we don't have the consent to do that.
You don't need consent to ask that question when information is already being shared with the MASH.
I agree, but then what would we do with the information once we got it?
Well, you could have gone back to the MASH and said, this is clearly concerning. You could have raised it with the police. You could have raised it with the head of service.
So MASH have got all the information that we've got. They share our file. So they've got all that information. They can see all the records, and the social worker at MASH, that's their role, to come to us if they've got any questions.
Do you regret not asking any questions at all about this episode?
I mean, I wasn't, like I said, I wasn't in work at that point. I don't feel that is something that we could have added value to unless there's a process to back it, is what I'm saying. So yes, I do regret it, but we think we need a different process to allow that to happen.
Thank you. So I'm going to suggest that we break now and take a shorter lunch break. That will allow me to restrict any further questions to 10 or 15 minutes, I believe. We've been going for over an hour and a half.
Yes. We're now 10 to 1. When would you like us to sit again, Mr. Moss, bearing in mind...
1:30.
1:30, certainly. We'll sit again at 1:30.